Okay, well, welcome back to the summit. I want to introduce Lane Hornung, and Lane is the CEO and founder of Real Estate.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mario. Appreciate you asking me to be here.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm happy you're here, and you're somewhat unique here at the summit because geographically, you and I are only separated by maybe, 5 or 6 miles between South Boulder and Louisville?
We are just down the road from each other.
That's great. And we've known each other a few years. I'm really happy that you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we're going to do something a little different with Lane's presentation. So rather than him just give 3 tips, he's built his business, a lot of it through community marketing and farming, and he has a broker office now. How many agents do you have in your company now?
We have just over 130, 134, I think, today. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, congratulations. I mean, when I knew Lane years ago, he was an agent and built up his own team, and now he has his own company. So what he's going to talk about today is kind of farming, a geographic area, and really kind of leveraging the digital technology.
Perfect. Thanks for the intro, Mario. I'd love to share with you how we farm at Real Estate, my company, and we call that power farming in the digital age. So we'll get into farming as it existed in the past, and now the real opportunity that's presented by the internet and all the technology that, of course, we're all embracing. So. I'd start with saying that I would like everyone to suspend belief for a second and imagine a world where you have a business such as this. So first, you have a business where the phone rings, and on the other end, a person says, "Hey, you don't know me, but I know you, and I want you to sell my house." Who would like to get that phone call? I think.
Yeah. Everybody.
I think a lot of us would like to get that phone call, and not only does the person on the other end say they want you to sell their house, when they say it's 123 Oak Street, you actually go, "Yeah, I know that house. It's a house you're familiar with. You could probably price it right there on the phone." But of course, you're going to go through the mechanics of doing a CMA and get the data to back you up. But you could probably price it right out of your head. So you know the house. You know how to price the house.
I'm going to go ahead and put the screens up for you, okay?
Yeah, please do.
You were going so well by yourself, which was awesome.
It's always nice to have the screens. Yeah, and you can go ahead to the next slide, Mario. So you know the house. You know how to price the house. And the reason all that comes together is because you actually know that particular hyper-local micro market literally better than anyone else in the world. So that's the possibility. And some other possibilities. What if your business practice, go ahead, Mario, next slide. What if your business practice, as we're all looking ahead, we've done our business planning for 2016. What if you could know with certainty, 100% certainty, that you'd sell 10 plus listings with people you actually don't know as of today? 100% guaranteed 10 strangers would show up and you do transactions this year with them in your local neighborhood. And not only would you do 10 plus transactions this year, you would do 10 plus transactions for every year for the next decade. That would be really nice. I think we'd all agree to know. And of course, our time is valuable as realtors. So we would all love to close more deals with the same or less amount of work, because our time is actually what limits our production. So close more deals, work less. And then the last one, I really like this one. So imagine that you're this realtor. You've got your big cup of coffee, you got your valise, your briefcase, you're walking out the door in the morning, but you're not going to get in your car. You're actually just going to walk down the street to one of your listings or to visit a client. Wouldn't that be nice? to just walk to work every day right in your neighborhood. So I want to get everybody's thoughts kind of going in this direction about what is possible. And now I want to talk about how to make this a reality. So next slide. Farming is a way of practicing, a way of doing business that can make all the things I just talked about reality. I believe farming is the best business in real estate. And that's a pretty bold statement, right? Because basically implied in that statement, I'm saying it's better than Sphere. And I'll talk a little bit why I think it's better than Sphere. Don't get me wrong, Sphere is the foundation of every realtor's practice, and at 8Z, we are huge believers in Sphere. I mean, what's great about farming is it takes strangers, makes them your clients, and they become your Sphere, so they're related. But let's talk about farming just specifically on its own. What makes it, in my opinion, the best business in real estate? Well, one thing is it's differentiated. So the unique thing about real estate, as we all know, is every house is different. Every neighborhood is different. We are not selling a commodity. That's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. And that opportunity is it allows us to focus on a specific hyperlocal market and actually get to know it so well we can credibly say, I am the best in the world at knowing this market. That's a really powerful statement. And the reason it's possible, right, is because every little neighborhood and the houses in that neighborhood are all different. So you really can be the best in the world. And to me, that's the ultimate positioning, the ultimate brand position to be able to carve out, to say I'm the best. The next thing about farming is it's listing centric. I think probably the fact that the realtors who are joining the summit are here to work on their business and not just in their business, I'm guessing everyone knows the leverage you get through listings. And of course, in this tight inventory market, and it's pretty pervasive across the nation, the tight inventory market, easy question is, who would like to have another listing? I think pretty universally, everybody would like to have another listing because in most markets, there's a 90% plus probability that if you have a listing, you have a closing, and typically pretty quickly. So farming is all about getting listings. It's also discount proof. And what I mean by discount proof is, you're going on a listing appointment. Of course, you get the inevitable question, will you do this for a little bit less? Bob over at the other shop will do it for $228. So we all face that in this market. It's a reality. So how do you combat it? How do you show your value? Well, by being the best in the world at something, you inherently have expertise. And it's been shown time and time again that no matter the industry, especially in a transaction-based service with high dollars involved, consumers are willing to pay for expertise. You do not have to justify how much money you spend on your marketing. You don't have to justify how much time you put into a listing. You just have to establish that you're the best. And if they know that, they're willing to pay for it. So when they ask, you can say, yeah, you can use Bob for $228, or you can use me, and I'm the best. And chances are, not every time, not everything is foolproof, but more often than not, they will go with you at the price that you state. So being discount proof is really good. It's also more efficient. Farming is you can close more deals in less time. That's what I mean by more efficient. And so let's imagine look at your last year. Think of all the closings you've had. Now put them in a 1 mile radius around where you're sitting. How much time do you think you would have saved if all your closings from last year were within a 1 or 2 mile radius of where you're currently sitting or your office? And if you're a realtor trying to close 20, 30, 40, 50 plus deals a year, if you save 1 hour per deal, that's a vacation. It adds up quickly for high producing realtors. So more efficient, more closes, less time. It's also more effective. And what I mean by more effective is you get a higher ROI out of your marketing spend. We all, in some way, shape, or form, need to either spend money or we need to spend our own time on lead generation, on marketing, on prospecting, on creating business. The great thing about farming is it allows you to focus that time and money into a very small area. And over time, you start building on, marketing's all about frequency and sustainability. So over time, you get the marketing wheel spinning, your dollar cost goes down because you're focused on the same thing over and over and over again. That's the effective part of it. It's also predictable. I talked about the idea that power farmers know they're going to close at least double digits in their neighborhood. At AZ, we have all company training. I made a bet with all 134 realtors that one of our realtors, guy named Brad Klein, he dominates a neighborhood in Superior, Colorado called Rock Creek. I said, who in the room will bet me $1,000 that Brad won't close 10 deals in Rock Creek next year? And I was serious. I mean, I was willing to bet $1,000. Nobody took that bet. Why? Because they knew it. They all know Brad's going to close 10 deals in Rock Creek. Rain or shine, he's going to do it. Would you take that bet, Mario? You know that market.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. I was just going to say, and I know Brad, and yeah. I've done a lot of deals, done a couple deals with him. He's a great guy, and yeah, he totally dominates Superior. He's a very effective geographic farmer.
Yeah, he doesn't know exactly who's going to make that phone call, but he knows 10 people will. As he goes into the year. And that predictability translates into building a business that's actually built to last. I think in the long run, and I think what's great about Mario is he's always coaching us about how to build value, not just in ourselves, but in our business. And farming is business that if you get the wheel spinning, it's actually hard to stop. You could leave the neighborhood. You could leave the country. I know of a situation, unfortunately, where a realtor actually passed away. But his presence in his farm was so powerful, the agents in his office would sit floor years after his death just to take phone calls that were coming for him. That's built to last. And I don't want to use a morbid example, but it proves the point. So coaches out there, lots of coaches feel that farming is the most powerful way to grow and maintain a successful real estate practice. And that's from Tom Ferry. Next slide, Mario. Thanks. So if we all know farming works, why doesn't everyone do it? And I think it's worth looking historically at farming of the past and farming today in the digital age. Before, farming was pretty much single channel, direct mail. And direct mail is fairly expensive. Also, farming had a connotation of door knocking, that you had to get out there and beat the streets and knock on the doors. And the reality is that, in my experience, only about 1 out of 20 realtors is really suited to door knocking. They actually have the personality that when they stand there on that front porch and knock on the door, they're actually hoping someone answers the door. If you're one of the 19 others like me, you're knocking and hoping nobody answers. You're getting the X in the block and you're hoping nobody answers. But 1 out of 20 will actually like peek in the side windows and go, "I see you back there." But that's not for everybody. And then the last thing, and probably the biggest barrier, is it took a long time. It took 5 to 10 years to really get presence and to get the wheel spinning, as I say. Well, along comes this thing called the internet, which has changed our business in a lot of ways, and I think it's changed the business for great realtors so much for the better. And now farming there's this opportunity to apply the digital world to farming. So it's now multi-channel, offline and online. Those online touches, which can be very high in number and frequency, are actually at a much lower cost than direct mail. As we'll get into it, I still believe it takes both offline and online. But again, those online touches are a lot more cost effective and they're a lot easier. They don't require you to have the personality of being a door knocker. Do they replace in-person contact? Absolutely not. But they create opportunities for in-person contact. And then finally, how long it takes has been drastically reduced. And this isn't theory when I say 1 to 2 years. We have 8Z realtors who are brand new, freshly minted licensees We bring them into our system. They start farming, and we've seen them have success in 1 to 2 years. And what I mean by success is not just a random closing in their farm, an actual repeatable, not to say that they're doing 10, but they're having a sequence of closings that is predictable. So success can come a lot earlier.
Yeah,
right.
and I think a quick point here is that, I've been a realtor about the same time as you, early 2000s, and I could totally relate how long it took when we started back then to build a farm.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was, like you said, direct mail and door knocking, which I don't like to do either. And so I think you're right on the money with how now it's a completely different world. And your pictures, totally represent that. I like that.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah. So let's hit the next slide. So that's the opportunity. There's also a challenge inherent in the digital age with the quote unquote internet empowered consumer. And by the way, the internet empowered consumer is 90% plus of the consumers out there, as every buyer and seller survey from NAR year after year is telling us. I mean, everybody's on the internet. So when you think about these internet empowered consumers, though, they have as much data as we do. There's almost data overload. If you gave me an address right now, I could find 1,000 websites that would tell me everything I need to know about that listing. There's no shortage of data. What there is a shortage of is professionals to interpret that data. That's what the consumer is looking for. They're looking for someone to interpret the qualitative part of the data. Farming certainly plays to that. Consumers are also demanding specialization. It's not just, hey, you're kind of a nice guy, and I do, when I think it's becoming tough to say, I do transactions all over Denver, Colorado, all over the Denver metro area. And I hear realtors say that, and I wonder, how can they really back that up? All those markets are different. And I think the consumer is starting to understand that the suburbs of a big city, the markets are different. They're not the same on one side of town as they are on the other. So they're starting to demand specialization. And then lastly, consumers are increasingly choosing a professional, not a friend. And the way they're doing that is they're interviewing us online. They're looking at our transaction histories. They're going to start looking at where those transactions happen. They're looking at our consumer reviews. They're interviewing us before we talk to them. And if we happen to be a friend or friendly, are people still asking their friends for a personal referral? Of course. But then they type that name in to Google and they do a little online vetting of it. So it's a combination. It's never just only professional and only friend. I think in today's world, if you can be a professional and be a friend or friendly, it's a slam dunk. They're going to choose you. So I think farming addresses all these. So first and foremost, before we start putting on our overalls and taking out our hose and getting after farming, let's think about what the mindset of a farmer is. And this is probably the most important thing, and this is probably what trips people up the most. You got to go into it with, even though I said it takes 1 to 2 years to start seeing success, it's still, I'm talking years, not months or weeks. It's still a marathon, not a sprint, and you have to have that mindset going in. You also need to invest your time. If you're looking for a business opportunity that's going to produce 6-figure income for you, it's going to take at least 5 hours a week. One of the AZers here who about 55% of his business comes directly from his farm. Some other folks asked him, "Hey, Eric, how much time do you spend farming a week?" And he said, "About 25 hours." And everyone kind of gasped, like, "Really? 25 hours only in your farm, nowhere else?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, 55% of my business comes from my farm. It's actually super efficient for me." So he was looking to spend more time in his farm because it was so much more efficient. But you got to spend the time. There's no magic wand or silver bullet for farming. It's going to require your time. You also have to have the mindset of, I'm going to give value. I'm going to give my market knowledge away. I'm going to share that with everybody, and then I'm going to wait for the business to come back to me. That's the mindset you have to have. Kind of cool. Remember that photo of the realtor walking off his front porch? Well, the great thing about farming is you have a new office. It's called your farm. You need to be in it. You need to show up for work there. For a lot of people, that's really attractive, the idea of just being able to become part of a community, a neighborhood. You also have to have the mindset of defending your home field. Hey, I'm a Bronco fan. We beat the Patriots last week with our second string quarterback. A big part of what we did to secure that victory with a little help from the refs, but a big part of it was that we defended our home field. It was snowing at Mile High. The Broncos said, this is our field. And you got to have that mindset as a farmer. This is my territory. I'm the best at it. So why wouldn't you use me? Why wouldn't you work with me? And then lastly, keep in mind, and I see this is more of a thing not to be distracted by. A lot of times people who are getting into farming or thinking about getting into farming, they focus too much on the competition. They focus on, well, there's already Susie and Jane in that neighborhood, and they seem to have it really locked up. I can tell you there's not a neighborhood in the United States that doesn't have opportunity for someone else to come in. Real estate is so fragmented. All you have to do is run the numbers pick a neighborhood, look at the listings sold in that neighborhood. If you see anybody over 50%, I'll be shocked, which means, nobody has a market locked up, even in the places you think they have a dominator. Finally, the most important part of the mindset is consistency. Farming's all about consistency. Next slide, Mara. All right, so let's pick a farm. At 8Z, we like to say the Goldilocks size, not too big, not too small, is 1,000 to 2,000 households. Remember, I'm talking households, not people. I'm talking rooftops. And if I was going to skew to one side, I would skew to the higher end of that, the 2,000. When you pick a farm, you don't want to make up your own farm. You don't want to draw your own boundaries and say, this is my neighborhood because I like these little pockets. And you actually just want to go with the street level thinking that's out there. And what I mean by that is, what do people in the community think of as the neighborhoods? Don't try to gerrymander and draw all these jiggy-jaggy borders. Just go with kind of what's already exists as neighborhoods. Pick a neighborhood that's contiguous. And contiguous is a fancy way of saying you can draw one boundary around it, one border around it. So you really don't want any satellite neighborhoods. And it's tempting sometimes for realtors when they're picking a farm. It's tempting to say, well, I just want to add that little pocket over there of really nice high-priced homes. What we see is that little pocket, that satellite becomes an orphan. It's neglected. You might as well just not even try to farm that community. So pick a contiguous area. Common question, single family or attached. A lot of folks who, focus on single family, they're like, I don't want to deal with the condos. I think that's a mistake. You're picking a geographic area. Do the entire housing stock in that territory. It's surprising what kind of transactions can come out of condos, townhomes, from the renters in those properties. Sometimes they want to buy in the neighborhood. Just don't overthink it. Farm the whole thing, all the property types. A lot of folks, when they talk about farming, they'll talk about turnover rate, that you want to have at least a 6% plus turnover rate. Turnover rate is simply you take the annual sales, you divide by the number of households in the farm. So 6% is about 1 out of 16. Of course, anything better than that, anything greater than that is nice, but I don't believe it's required. One, turnover rates vary year to year. So could be low one year, could be high the next year. I think you just got to commit to the farm, and there's not really a neighborhood where the turnover rate is so low that you're not going to be able to create business out of it. It's nice to know what it is. More important than everything above, than everything I just mentioned, the most important thing is ease of engagement. How easy is it going to be for you to be in your office, your farm? How many times a week are you in that farm? Do you go there to drop your kids off? Do your kids go to school there? Do you have clubs there? Do you shop in that neighborhood? The easiest thing is pick where you live. Because if you pick where you live, when you open your door up in the morning and walk outside, you're in your farm. And there's also probably a reason why you live there. You probably like it. You chose it already. So at 8Z, we always start with where do people live as the first choice. All right. Last little note. I talked a little bit about, hey, there's already a neighborhood dominator. Again, it doesn't matter. Typically, there's an opportunity when there's a neighborhood dominator to actually employ what I call the Avis strategy. And the Avis strategy is I try harder. So a lot of times that established dominator, people might be a little tired of them. They might be looking for something new. And again, even if that dominator has, let's say, 50% of the market, you don't have to take one listing away from them in the coming year. You got half the market available to you. So don't let that stop you from farming a community. Next slide, Mario. All right. What does it take to be a farmer? First and foremost, you got to know the market. That's where all the positioning, the branding, the expertise, the confidence comes from. And so you got to study your market. It's not that complicated, though. I put what I consider the key metrics. If you know these key metrics on a daily basis and keep track of their trends, I think you'll be well armed with knowledge. You'll be above the rest of the neighborhood, the realtors, because nobody studies typically a specific neighborhood. So you got to know the supply of inventory, just the number of active listings divided by monthly sales. And sometimes people gloss over this a little bit, but I like to get a little more specific. So to calculate supply, the easiest way to do it is to, on either the last day of the month or the first day of the month, just do a quick count, run your search in your MLS, how many active listings are there? And then look back to the previous month and get the number of sales and simply do the division. I know it sounds simple, but you know, these are like hands-on ways to do things. Percentage under contract, I think, is a really good indicator in a timely way what that market's doing. So you look at the actives, how many of those are under contract. Gives you a real good indication of how hot that market is. Anything over 50%, which a lot of our markets are right now, you know, half the listings are actually under contract, then that's a hot market. Average days to contract is, the consumer really understands this one, so it's a good metric to have. And I specifically say to contract, not to close. Contract is a better indicator of the pace of the market. And then average price per square foot. Surprisingly, it's not always easy to pull this out of the various MLS systems, but this is the key metric. This is really where value is. And I make one little note of, you know, if you're in a neighborhood that has a lot of basements, you can be an expert just by knowing how to interpret, how to deal with houses that have basements and don't have basements. That's a key consideration. And then lastly, you got to know the trends for all these metrics. So you just tabulate them once a month, and then you look at the trend data. And when someone asks you that you know, common question, hey, how's the market? Mario, how's the market? Instead of saying, wow, I'm really busy, because they didn't really ask you how your business is, they asked you how the market is, you actually answer with very specific stats. Hey, prices are up 4.4% year over year. The supply of houses is currently 3.2 months. It's moving up a little bit. The average days to contract is 17. And that's actually moving down. It's a seller's market, but I think it might be weakening a little bit. That would be a great answer where you immediately establish that you're an expert. And I don't use the decimal points to the 10th by accident. When you state a metric, a data point to the 10th of a percent, they know you're not making it up. They know you actually calculated it. So again, it goes back to knowing the why, not just the what. They can find the what out a million places on the internet. Your job is to tell them the why. Why is the market getting softer? Why is the market so hot? Why are all these relocators moving in? That's what's affecting sales and values. So know your market, and then next slide, Mario. Know your inventory. So obviously related concepts, but what's great about farming is you can it's 1,000 to 2,000 households. You can start to know every house in that farm. And the way to do it is you set up your polygon search in your MLS, and almost every MLS system allows that now. And I want to be clear, don't do a subdivision. Don't do a legal subdivision search or do a polygon search, because if you do legal subdivisions, you'll miss some houses typically.
So what is polygon? What does that mean to you?
So polygon means, you go into the MLS and do a search by map is typically what it's labeled. and it allows you to draw the boundaries around your farm. So you only have to do that once. So if that sounds super complicated, call up the support line, have them walk you through it once. For a tech pro like you, Mario, it's a snap. But some people, that they might have to get a little help doing it. The great news is once you do it once, and then you save it, and you don't have to do it again. So you wake up every morning, grab your cup of coffee, you run your hot sheet for your farm, first and foremost, because that's where your mind is, on your farm. That's your home turf. So one thing to keep in mind is solds are as important as new listings. Of course, in this market, especially in these tight inventory markets, listings are important, but when you're trying to learn a market and explain it to people, the solds tell you a lot. So you really want to understand why things sold for what they did. People want to know the story. They want to know how many offers did it get? Why did it sell for that much? Who bought it? And it doesn't have to be your listing to find that information out because it's your territory. So, and then the other really best habit practice for power farmers is they run their hot sheet and they actually set aside time in the morning to go preview any new listing in their farm. It's just part of their routine. Some days there aren't listings, some days there are, but they get out and see them as quickly as they can. And the great thing about that is over time, if you go preview, and obviously if you have a buyer, of course, take them, but if you don't have a buyer, you still go preview it. And the great thing about that is over time, and again, farming's a marathon, not a sprint, you'll be able to, you will have been in a lot of houses. So you'll be able to say what I consider are the four most powerful words an agent can say, and that is, I've been in that house. When you can say that, and you can follow that with ... I've been in that house, here's what I know about it, I've been in that house, one of my buyers actually bought it, I've been in that house, I listed it 5 years ago, immediately builds market expertise. So the idea is to get in a lot of houses. And that's hard if you say it's going to be the entire market. But when you narrow it down to 1,000 to 2,000 households, you can actually do it. All right, next slide, Mario. So farm marketing, you know your inventory, you know your market, so you're an expert. Now, how do you tell everybody you're an expert? How do you get the word out? Well, you got to have some marketing to do that. And we believe in a three-channel approach: offline, online, and what I call the in-person ground game. So let's get into the offline, Mario. Nothing new here. This is tried and true stuff, but it works. Just listed postcards, super effective. Just sold postcards, even more effective for a farmer, because a farmer is trying to get listings. They're trying to show that they sold something and then get a listing off. Every one of their solds ideally would generate another listing. So just listed, just sold. A couple examples here. Quarterly market update, and what I mean by that is you're saying what happened in that farm market for the previous quarter. You're giving them some stats, some data. If you have room, you give them all the individual properties, addresses that sold. You can do that on a postcard or in a folded flyer, depends on your preference. Postcard is easier. I would just tell you, postcard is going to be easier. And farming is all about getting it done sustainably, quarter after quarter. You can't miss anything. So we skew to the side of simplicity, knowing that it's at least going to go out. And then I give an example of a home value postcard. Here you can see at the bottom on the right is a postcard where we just ask people, hey, you want to find out your home value? Remember, though, we believe that the farm expert, the human, the realtor, is always going to be able to give a better valuation than the machine. It's just an entryway for you to have a discussion with a homeowner about the value of their home. And then lastly, and often overlooked, is listing flyers. It's become a little bit in vogue or a best practice to say, hey, I'm going to laminate my flyer. I'm going to zip tie it to the sign. I'm not going to have a flyer box. I think that's a mistake if you're a farmer. If you're a farmer, you want to make sure all the neighbors can get your listings, because you're trying to get listings around that listing. So just a tip, I would say, on that. All right, online. this is the opportunity of power farming in the digital age. The online is what's changing the game. And the center of the universe for your online presence is going to be a hyper-local website that showcases your talent, your expertise, and your knowledge. And that, the easiest way to think about this is it's a content-driven site. So, a blog, but it's focused on that market, and it's focused on explaining not just what's happening in that market, but why it's happening and how that market works. You want to share your knowledge, you want to give it away, and be ready to receive the business that comes back. So that's the core. I'll talk about the content that goes into that in a second, but the site itself is a pretty simple site. Along with that site, you need to gather email addresses to build a farm email newsletter over time. That's probably your most effective marketing vehicle, the email newsletter. One, it doesn't cost a lot, and two, you can touch a lot of people very easily with it. You got to support your hyper-local site with other satellite sites. One is your personal brochure website, and I'm making the distinction here. Your hyper-local website should not be your realtor profile site. Those are two different websites. You still, of course, need a brochure site for yourself, and you can link to it because people are going to want to know about you, of course. But the nice thing is when you separate your hyper-local site from your personal brochure site, you can make your brochure site a little broader than just your farm territory. And then, what we do here is part of our farming program is we have a Facebook page for the neighborhood, for every neighborhood, a mirrored site, if you will, to the hyper-local site, but it's on Facebook. I would also say take a look at Nextdoor, and Nextdoor is a neighborhood website, nextdoor.com, and some neighborhoods it's really has a lot of traction, a lot of neighbors are members, others not as much. But what I would caution is tread lightly on Nextdoor. Don't show up and say, hey, I'm a realtor, I want to list your home. You will be universally panned. So,
outcast. Yeah,
outcast. Just tread lightly, be a neighbor first, and then when opportunities come up to share your knowledge or recommend a handyman, then jump on them. The other thing I talked about is, as part of a farming strategy, is the consumer is doing these online interviews. So they're going to know that you're kind of the guy or the gal in the neighborhood, but they're going to want to know more. So they're going to look, and the profile and review sites that I think are worth your time and worth paying attention to are Yelp, LinkedIn, Zillow, Realtor.com. Those are the four. If you focus on those four, you're probably in pretty good shape. And then lastly, if your neighborhood has an HOA website, of course, you might have an opportunity to sponsor or get involved with that. That's the online program. The content that feeds that hyper-local site is pretty simple. 4 different categories. This is how you show your expertise. Put a little structure around it. So the first is when you go preview a home, you just do a quick little write-up. We call that a listing review. You just give your take on the property. You don't regurgitate the data, because again, they can get that anywhere. You interpret the data. Do you think it's priced right? Do you think it's going to sell fast? Do you think it shows well? Just 4 or 5 bullet points. We're not talking an essay. The consumer actually won't read an essay. 4 or 5 bullet points with your observations, that's a listing review. A sold review is simply when a property sells, you give your interpretation of what that means. Oh, this means the market is going up because at this price and this price per square foot, that helped everybody. The reason this sold so quickly is because it was in a really attractive part of the neighborhood. It's on one of our premier streets. That's what a sold review is. Again, interpreting the why. And then the monthly market update is you want to, once a month, you want to run your numbers back to that data I cited earlier. You run those numbers, and then you just comment on it. Again, 4 or 5 comments, not an essay, not a book report. This might take you a half an hour to write, maybe an hour. The sold review should take no longer than 15 minutes to review. the listing review no longer than 15. And people who do this frequently here at AZ, they have it down to 5 minutes. They can do sold reviews, listing reviews in less than 5 minutes, market updates in less than a half an hour. It's not too much. Again, if you go back to, you're looking at a business opportunity that could be a 6-figure revenue generator for you. Is it easy to do content? No, it's work. But the payoff is high. And then the last type of content is just general interest. You know, events. People love photos. If you're in your farm, take some photos and post them. First snowfall of the year, boom. You know, people like that, and that's easy. All right. The other leg of the 3-legged stool of getting the word out about your expertise is this in-person ground game. Farming is still an on-the-ground endeavor, and open houses are the most important element of your ground game. I hear occasionally, I don't hear it as much anymore, but I hear occasionally people say, oh, open houses are a waste of time. They never sell a house. One, if you think that today, that was about 15 years ago, before this thing called the internet. The internet has made open houses increasingly important. It's actually how a lot of buyers see houses. They look at them online, and then they go see them at open houses. You can pick up clients, buyer clients, and you can definitely sell houses at open houses in the digital age. But more importantly, as a farmer, you can get listings at your open house. You want all the neighbors to come because those are your people. You want to meet them. You want to show them who you are in person. You want to show them how you merchandise and market and stage a home and market it. So a lot of power farmers will actually have a preview open house for the neighbors only. You're going to have your open house at 2 o'clock, have a neighbor open house at 12:30. Bring them all in at the same time. Get to know them a little bit and bring a listing agreement because you might go on a listing appointment after your open house. That's the mindset you need to have. So also the in-person ground game is getting involved with HOAs, schools, teams, clubs. Whatever you're already doing in your farm, just do it with a little more intent. Do it with the intent that I'm the expert here. I'm a resource for this neighborhood. I'm the neighborhood expert. So you do the same things, you interact with the same people, but you have a little different mindset and a little more intent behind it. A lot of times people will ask, hey, should I create a new event in my farm? I want to have a garage sale, or I want to have a coat drive. Those are all great ideas. What I would say is, though, start with an event that already exists instead of inventing your own, creating your own. Because the hardest thing about an event is actually getting people there. So that is the tough part of events. So why not just piggyback on an existing event where somehow they've already cracked the code on getting people there, and then you sponsor it, you make sure you're interacting, you're there in person, you hang your banner up, hey, Bob Smith, your Shady Acres neighborhood realtor, and you press the flesh, you get to know people. So that's a great way to get involved in the neighborhood. And then lastly, just get out in your farm, walk your dog, hang out in the coffee shop, whatever it takes for you to engage with people in the neighborhood. So that's the in-person ground game. If you kind of summon this all up, the in-person ground game, the offline, the online, it's all doable, but it adds up. So, if you're going to start farming, can you do it yourself? Absolutely. I know many individual agents who really committed to farming, and they set all these systems up on their own, and they've been successful doing it. So you can certainly do it yourself. You can also plug into an existing system. And existing systems would be a brokerage like AZ. Okay, here's the commercial part. Or there's teams out there that farm very effectively, and you can glob onto that and plug into an existing system. The other thing, and again, this is the unabashed commercial portion. At AZ, we've been power farmers for a long time, and that's how we've grown our brokerage, one of the key drivers of our brokerage. But we want to open up our farming program actually to non-8Z realtors, because we just operate here in Colorado and a little bit in California. I believe farming, as I've already told you, is the best business in real estate. I would like to see other realtors start farming. I think it's great for the consumer. I think it's great for realtors. And so we're launching a new farm marketing program centered around, because the hardest part of farming is that hyperlocal website. That's the hardest thing for a realtor to really set up and maintain and keep going. We're not web developers, we're realtors. So we're launching Zavvy.com, and Zavvy is a hyperlocal website for every neighborhood. Eventually it'll be nationwide. And I just would share, if you're interested in more information about Zavvy, go to the URL there in the PowerPoint and let us know, and we'll keep you up to date on Zavvy. But that's all I've got, Mario. I think that's my overview of power farming.
Okay, well, let me stop the screen share.
Yeah, no sweat.
Yeah, no, that was good. And, I'll kind of throw in my perspective here.
Yeah.
A couple things. What you talk about with farming and the digital age, I mean, everything that you went through, I can relate to being a realtor since 2002.
Yeah.
And you and I were talking the other day. I mean, like, one of my biggest regrets is that I didn't stick with a farm. I started it.
Yep.
And, it was a marathon. I didn't stick with it.
Yeah.
So everything that you're talking about, it rings so true. And I think it's really very, very helpful for anybody watching, just to do what you're talking about is going to affect their business in a huge way going forward.
Yeah, I appreciate you being open and honest about that. I think that's a common refrain from a lot of experienced realtors like yourself who have a good practice going, and it's largely a sphere-based practice. Again, sphere is awesome, right? It's the foundation of any real estate practice. But a lot of folks regret not sticking with the farming. And it's never too late to start, though, Mario.
And you're right. You're so true.
And the thing about it is, the key is farming those strangers who then list with you or buy with you. They become clients and they become spheres.
Yeah, I agree.
They're very complementary.
Yeah, it's a snowball effect, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the other thing I want to make a comment, because I have the advantage of knowing you and I know how you've built your business. And I think, all of you that are watching the summit that are part of this, check out what Lane is talking about with the Zavvy.com. I'll put a link on a speaker page. And what I know is that when I first came into contact with Lane many years ago, he's been ahead of the curve from the technology standpoint. He created his own website, cohomefinder.com, and that's how he built his team. And as a result of the team, he went out and he's built his own business. So he is somebody who's a true rising star in the real estate industry. And it's not just fluff. This is something that can really help your business. And I'm going to take a look at it. And I just want to kind of give that perspective on you, Lane, because a lot of people don't know kind of your history.
Yeah, I mean, I got into real estate from technology. I was one of the original executives at ZipRealty. I ran business development and marketing. I was responsible for lead gen. We were, one of the first folks who figured out how to generate internet leads. That was 15 years ago. I left there, like you said, I created my own website here in Colorado. That became, and what I call those search and display, websites, that's real estate 1.0. That's online real estate 1.0. I think this digital farming, this power farming in the digital age is really the next chapter in how the internet is going to impact real estate. And frankly, the internet's impacted real estate a lot, but it hasn't gone to the core of real estate. The internet is still mostly about buyer leads, but the core of real estate is listings. And I think that's the real opportunity that I'm excited about.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. Okay, so one bonus question real quick. So I've been asking all the people part of the summit because this is going to be middle of January. I want you to look back, 2015, and just share with us a goal, an accomplishment, something that you achieved. Could be personal, could be business, something that you're proud of that you could look back, because I think it's important for all of us to appreciate what we did to go forward.
Yeah, you know, at 8Z, and I'll start there. You know, one of the things I'm most proud of this year is that we have a lot of experienced realtors at 8Z. We average 20 plus closings per license. You know, we have agents who close 40, 50, and their individual license, right? I mean, we're very strict about how we measure that. So we're a highly productive brokerage. However, we started bringing on brand new realtors, you know, rookies. And so one of the things I'm most proud of is we have a thing at 8Z called Club 10. Anybody who sells $10 million plus worth of real estate gets a all expenses paid trip to some exotic locale, typically Mexico, with you know, themselves and their significant other. So it's, you know, making Club 10 is, and a lot of our experienced agents, you know, they make it year after year after year. But what I'm really proud of this year is our rookies who started with us 2-3 years ago are now making Club 10. And so we have these rookies who, you know, they did their first transaction with 8Z. They plugged into our systems, including farming, and now they're making Club 10. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is awesome, because as you and I have talked about before, the failure rate's so high for realtors. So for you to bring people into your company, your family, and help them build their business, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I get to live vicariously through them.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for being here at the summit. I know how busy you are. This is an awesome presentation. And so
I love what you're doing with the summit. You know, really innovative and great idea.
Okay. Well, thanks, Lane. We'll talk again soon.
Okay, Mario. Thank you.